All right, so now the fun begins. Routing and pathing, the probably most important step in the whole process. This is something you're not going to see. I don't know that there's a whole lot of videos out there on InkStitch and routing and pathing because nobody either does it or wants to show it. I don't know. But it's real important. So let's dive in here. Now we've set our embroidery sequence. So we're going to start with this piece, then this piece, and then this piece. And if you look here in our layers palette, InkStitch will stitch in the order in which items appear in our layers palette from the bottom to the top. So it starts with this piece, and then the next piece, and then the top piece, and then it hops over here to the right hand side, and it's going to stitch this piece, then this piece, then this piece. So it goes from the bottom up to the top down, and then it's going to do our lower piece and then our upper piece. Okay. So with that said, let's talk about routing and pathing. So I'm going to go ahead and select our design and go into Simulator here in InkStitch. I have a keyboard shortcut set for Simulator, which is Control-Alt-S on my system. And you can see how these are going to stitch out. And there you go. Okay. Now, if I turn on the frogs, this is where the problem is. As you see all of these jump stitches going every which way. Big, huge jump stitches. Big, huge jump stitches. And this is not what we want in an ideal world. It's not what we want. So you'll notice on that first piece, it's stitching and jumping from the bottom all the way to the top. Okay? And then on the second piece, it's stitching right here and jumping to just right there. Okay? And then this piece is jumping all the way over here. Okay? See that big jump? Shoo, boop, right all the way over there. Okay? And then this piece is finishing down here and jumping up to the top. And then likewise, this piece is jumping from here to here. So we don't want jumps happening in that particular fashion. So we have to take control of what's going on here. So the first thing is that first piece we want to be stitching from left to right. So let's go into params and see how this is stitching from left to right. Now I have a keyboard shortcut for params, Control-Alt-P. And let's back up here because I was talking and wasn't paying attention. It does stitch. See, it starts on the top left and finishes on the bottom right. So that part's good. But then this piece, this next piece, needs to start from the bottom and stitch up to the top. So it needs to go in a little bit different direction. So let's go under InkStitch, params, and what direction is that stitching? And it's stitching from top to bottom, so we want to swap the rails because we want to go from bottom to top. And then what that does is this one finishes at the bottom down here, and then it starts right up here. Okay, so it's just going to make that little bit of a jump there. Okay, and now this one here, right, it finishes up top, but we actually need it to finish at the bottom because we want the jump stitch to happen differently. So this is where things get complicated. And this is just going to be the best way for me to kind of walk you through this. So first of all, the distance from here to here is 2.7 millimeters. Okay, so that's a fairly small distance. And the distance from here to here is about 3 millimeters. So that is normally when we're doing jump stitches, we want it to be at the closest connecting point. So instead of the farthest connecting point. So this is stitching from top to bottom, and then this is stitching from bottom to top, but I actually want it to end at the bottom because I want the jump stitch to be happening right here. So how do we make it do that? Well, in order to make that do it, so we're starting here, but we also want to end here. And we really can't do that very easily without making some changes here. So what we're going to do here, and just follow along because this will make no sense in the beginning, but it does make sense in the end. So what we're going to do here, in order for it to start here and also end here, what we're going to do is we're going to split this satin column. So I'm going to add a node here and add a node here, and we're going to break that, and then we're going to Shift Control K, break everything. But then what we have to do, this piece is now separate from this piece, and we can't have that. So we have to combine those two back together. Remember, Control K. Okay. And Control K. So now what's going to happen is it's going to jump from this. So this bottom piece, you see right here, is going to stitch after this first piece. And we don't want that. We want to move that up in the layers stack. We want this top piece to stitch first, and then the bottom piece. And then that will give us the option to have it start and stop at the bottom. Now, so far I know this makes absolutely no sense, but let me follow through here. So we're going to take this bottom piece and the top piece, okay, and we're going to come up to Extensions, InkStitch, and use this tool stroke, jump stitch to stroke. And when I do that, it will create us a jump stitch. Now we're saying don't make a jump stitch if it's less than 2 millimeters, and go ahead and hit apply. And you'll see that it'll create a jump stitch for us. Now, where is the jump stitch being created? Well, it's being created, it's ending down here. This first shape ends down here, but the next shape to stitch is starting up top, and that's what we want. So what we're going to do now is we're going to bury the jump stitch that we just created inside our satin. Okay? So now it's going to jump from here to here where we want the jump stitch to happen, and then it's going to run all the way up top here. Then it's going to come down, satin, 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 and then it's going to move on to this piece. Okay? But this piece, we want to make sure, first of all, that it's satin. We did edit and break it apart and combine it back together, so it's not currently satin. So that's step number one. But we do want to stitch from top to bottom. Now, the other little catch is you'll notice that it starts over here. If we back up, this piece starts at the bottom, what I would consider bottom left. So we'll choose Apply and Quit. And then we'll do the same thing up here. Okay. Satin column, custom satin column, and it is ending up here. So what's going to happen is it's going to jump from where it ends to where it begins, and we don't want that. We want the ending and beginning at the same point. So to achieve this, we're going to choose swap rails and reverse the first rail. It does still stitch from top to bottom, but you'll notice now that it ends at the bottom and also begins at the bottom. And that's ultimately what we want to have happen. Okay? So, that first jump stitch does, in fact, happen the way we want to. Now, the next one, we want it to start here. Okay? But we also want it to end here. So, we're going to do the same thing that we did previously. So, we select those two. We break them apart, we break the path apart, then we select this one, and we bring it back together, and then this one, and this one, and we bring it back together. And then what this stitch is, which is path 14, and then that is path 6, so is this path 17? It is, and that is what we want to stitch next. So from this piece to this piece, we need to create a jump stitch. I have a keyboard shortcut for Control-Alt-J that brings up jump stitches for us, much quicker than going through the menu to do it. And then remember, we have to bury the jump stitch. Now, this is a problem. I did not catch this. This is definitely a problem. You see where the jump stitch is. It's saying that this piece is starting at the bottom. So I didn't catch that previously. We need to stitch from the top down. It's not. So we're going to fix that real quick. Create custom satin column. So we're going to swap our rails because we needed to stitch from the top down. And then we also want to be mindful of where it ends, where the stitching ends. It's end at the bottom or top. In this case, it's ending at the top, which is fine. But where does this stitch start and stop then? And it is, we'll go to custom satin column. First of all, it needs to stitch from the top down. And it's starting on the inside, so we are going to reverse our first rail. And so it's starting at the top, and that's where the other one ended, was the top. So we'll go ahead and choose Apply and Quit. So now we can adjust this jump stitch that was created for us. So we're going to move it to the top where that piece begins, right? Now we're going to bring this down here, bury it inside of our satin. So now we just have a little jumpy jump. So this piece ends down here. So then this piece here can just, boop, jump right over here. Okay? So that will allow that to all stitch out properly. Now, I will point out, because we made all these adjustments to these satin stitches on this side, there's 4 pieces of satin up here. We do not have all of these same parameters. Remember, we added zigzag underlay, we added contour underlay. Remember all that? So we'll go back in and add. See, we have zigzag here, but we don't have zigzag where we did our edits. Okay, so we are going to go back in and add zigzag to all of those pieces. We are going to add contour underlay to all of those pieces. And now you'll see that we have our contour and zigzag there, contour and zigzag there, contour and zigzag there. Okay, and then back over here to satin column, our pull compensation, we added 10%. And then we came down here, we did a maximum stitch length of 4 millimeters. And I think we used the, staggered. So we want to just make sure everything now has those same attributes, and now they do. So let's go ahead and add a preset. So we'll do wide satin. We'll call it wide satin. Staggered. And we'll choose add. And now you'll see that we have the wide satin staggered. And we can see I already had a preset there. So now we'll go ahead and choose apply and quit. And so now all of those pieces have the appropriate parameters. So now what we want to do is we want that thread jump to happen right here at the closest connecting point. Okay, so instead of the longest connecting point. All right. So to do this, we have to do kind of the same thing. We want it to start here, but we also want it to end here because we want the thread jump between these two to be the same. So we do the same process as we did previously. We double click, we break apart, we break completely apart, then we go and select those two pieces, Control K, we select this piece, and those Control K, and now this piece will stitch, and we want, so that's path 6, we want path 13 to stitch next, okay, and then we want this stitch to stitch next. So this piece here, we want to stitch from the top down, so we'll go into params here and see what's happening here. It is stitching, we'll go into satin column here, custom satin column. It is stitching from the top down, and you'll see it's finishing at the top. So we can go ahead and apply our preset, the wide satin staggered here. So it has all of those presets that we previously had, the 10% compensation, so on and so forth. If I go back up here, it is stitching from the top down and finishing at the top. So there we go. So all of that's good. And this is going to have to stitch from the top down as well. So we'll go into params here. Make sure that's happening like we need it to. So we'll go ahead and convert it to satin column here. It is stitching from the top down, but it is starting at the bottom and not the top. Okay, so we'll make that adjustment. So first of all, let's apply the wide satin staggered, and that will do all the zigzag and contour and compensation for us. So that much is taken care of. But you can see it is starting from the bottom, so we want that to start from the top. So what do we have to do? Well, we have to swap our rails, and we have to reverse our first rail. Everything else remains the same, but you can see it's now starting at the top. Apply and quit. Excellent. So now all we need to do is from this piece to this piece, we need to add our jump. So we'll use our keyboard shortcut, Control-Alt-J, to go into our jump here. We've created our jump now, and now we're going to edit the jump. So you can see how this is a little bit, or a lot, kind of tedious work, but I feel like it's worth it. Especially, if we were doing a one-off of this, maybe it would be such a big deal. If our machine does automatic thread trimming, maybe this wouldn't be such a big deal. But my machine does do automatic thread trims, but this will give us the fastest stitch results too. So there's a bit of a give and take here. So now we are going to go from this piece down to this piece. But how are we going to want to ultimately stitch this out? Well, we want to come down here. We want this to stitch. We want it to start and end down here. So we have to do the same thing we did previously. We'll go ahead and, so we'll go ahead and split it right there. And then we're going to split the whole shapes. And then we are going to select. So we got that piece, and we're going to combine it together. Then we have this piece, and we're going to combine it together. And then we'll start up here. We need this to be stitching from top down. So that's step number 1. Is it stitching from top down? Well, let's find out. It is going to stitch from top down, and it's going to end at the top. We'll go ahead and load those settings. And we'll choose apply and quit. So that's taken care of. Now this also needs to stitch from top down, and it needs to start at the top. So let's just see what we got going on here. So we'll go ahead and convert that to satin, It is stitching from top down, but of course it's stitching from the bottom up. So let's apply our um, settings here for our wide satin, and then we are going to swap our rails, and we're going to reverse our first rail. And now, if we slow this down, you'll see that in fact it does start at the top. So that's perfect. That's what we needed. So now this piece here is stitching path 20, and then we're going to go to what is path 23? Okay, so yes, so no path. We need to go from path 20, which is this piece here, to this piece up top, which is 12, and then to 23. So that's good. So we need to create the jump between these two. Control Alt J and choose apply. At the end here, I want to just talk to you about a little bit about something that's kind of funny. There's actually a function in InkStitch. It's called Auto Route Satin. And everything that we're doing manually, there's a function to do it automatically, where you just click a button and InkStitch will figure it all out for us. The only problem is if we come up here to extensions and choose InkStitch and come down here to Tool Stroke, or Tool Satin rather, you see where it says Auto Route Satin Columns? I have never ever been able to get that to work exactly the way I want to, or even remotely close to the way I want to. So sadly, I've never used it. But you know, it is what it is. All right, so we're almost done here. So there's path 23. So this is the next object to stitch, and we want it to stitch from the bottom up in this case. So let's go ahead and take a look and see if it is. And it is not, by the looks of it. So we will swap our rails. And now it is stitching from the bottom up. Excellent. So now there'll just be a small jump between this piece and this piece. And we can go ahead and just manually add it. Or we could leave it and the software would automatically apply the jump. But we'll just go ahead and do it. So you see, just that little jump. Done and dusted. Okay? So now the machine's going to stop because we have a color change. And this is going to be the next object that's going to stitch. And then this is going to be the next object that's going to stitch. The only thing I might do here is control exactly where the jump stitch happens. So if we hit Control Alt P, because we are going to have a jump stitch because we have two different colors. It is going to end on the left-hand side. Okay, so that's fine. And so we'll go ahead and choose Apply and Quit. So the only thing here is I would want this to start on the left-hand side or the right-hand side as well. So this ending on the right, let's make sure this is starting on the right. And it is not. So we're going to swap our rails. And so it's going to start on the right-hand side now. Excellent. Okay, so now this design is complete. Properly routed, everything the way we want it to. Now let's look at it in simulator mode so we can see exactly what's happening here. And this should all be correct. Okay, good. I'm going to turn on my frogs here. And so you can see where this ends and then it jumps up here. Now we could control this. If we really were being picky, I'd rather the jump happen on this side. So what we can do here is let's just show you that we can control that. So let's go back into params. And the only thing that we're going to do differently here is we're going to swap our rails. And we are going to reverse our first rail. And all that does is it changes the side that it finishes on. So it's going to finish over here on the right-hand side. See that cursor? So that's where our jump is going to happen now. It was happening from this side. Now it's going to happen from this side and start there. Okay, so let's look at that. And I will tell you, all these little tricks and doodads and things took me forever, ever to figure out because there was no videos that really explained this. But if I click on the frogs, now you can see it's jumping from the right and it's starting at the right. So we just have this jump. All right, so if we were going to stitch this out on a home embroidery machine, this is what the finished result would look like. And all we would have to do when this is finished, all we would have to do is come in here and clip this thread here, and clip this thread, and this thread, this thread, this thread, and this thread. Okay, we wouldn't have threads going way over here and way over there. It's all condensed. It's all, quote unquote, perfect. And that's what we want. We want nice, simple stitches. So you can see here, it's going to start out, stitch that, then it's going to have a running stitch up to the next piece, and then it's going to come down, a running stitch up to the next piece, and come down, and then bop over, run stitch all the way to the top, right, of our next piece, and come down and stitch, and then it's going to have a nice little jump stitch, run stitch all the way up to the top. You see how that just makes so much more sense? And there you go. That is a properly sequenced, routed design. Absolutely. Okay. So let's go ahead and close this out. And let's go ahead and save this logo because now it's totally complete. We're ready to stitch this out. We'll just call it Taggart. Okay. Now, do you want to see something as a little bonus extra that I was talking about? Because I want to show you. So let's just come down here and let me show you something real quick. I think I could show you this pretty quickly. So I am going to delete our jump, delete our jump, delete our jump, and delete our jump. Okay, so now I told you that InkStitch had a function that allowed us to auto route satin. Okay, so let me show you this real quick. So we're just gonna, these pieces here, they're separated. So what I need to do is I need to bring all these together. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. This one is already together. So I'm just combining the top and bottom of each one of these pieces. So doing that real quick. Top and bottom, top and bottom, top and bottom. Okay. And that piece is one solid. Okay, perfect. So now the pieces that have this node in between, can I just delete those? Maybe that's, no, I can't delete that. Yeah, I knew that. What I have to do is I have to join those. So let me go do that real quick. So join that one, join that one. We can join that one, join that one, and then we'll join that one, and we can join that one. And I think we already joined these, but it's not going to hurt to join them again. Okay, so now let's go ahead and convert this to satin. So that's the first thing we have to do. So let's go into params here. And of course we can load our preset. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to do staggered. And that's going to apply to all of our pieces. And so you can see that now we have zigzag and compensation and contour on everything again. And we'll choose apply and quit. So all of this work that we did up here, InkStitch is supposed to, as best as I understand it anyhow, is supposed to handle the auto routing of this. Now watch it make a liar out of me. But at any rate, let's try. Let's try doing that. So we'll go to extensions. we'll go to InkStitch here, and then the tool satin, we're going to auto route satin columns. So let's go ahead and choose that. And you see it says preserve the order of the satin columns. I do want that. So let's go ahead and do it. We'll hit apply and see what happens. Now, InkStitch is making lots of calculations for us. So let's go ahead and choose close. And you can see we've got something, and it did not make a liar out of me, which is good. I was happy about that. Needless to say, the end result is not something that is usable. And what if I delete these? I don't know that those even cause a problem, but let's just do this. I don't know how to use that tool. I've never seen it demonstrated that it even works. So I can't tell you. I've never seen anyone demonstrate it, but that's what it's supposed to do. It is supposed to auto route our satin. I just want to make sure that we do in fact have satin stitches everywhere. Okay, so we do. Everything is in the proper sequence. Okay, good. So let's try that again. We'll go back to InkStitch here, Tool Satin, Auto Route Satin Columns. Okay, there's no other options. Preserve the order. I want to preserve the order. What if we hit Live Preview? I've never done that before. So you can get a preview of what it's going to do before it does it, and you can see that it more or less gives us the same result, and so that is a completely useless result. So there you go. It doesn't work. So that's why I developed my own way. And but at any rate, we got it figured out, right? So I want to do one last thing here. Let's go into InkStitch extensions. I know it takes forever, but let's do a stitch plan preview. I just want to see what it looks like, kind of, sort of, once it's embroidered. It's not going to be a great example, but it does kind of give us a little bit of a preview, but it does take a minute. In the older version of InkStitch, this simulator didn't take quite as long, I don't think. This has changed a little bit in the newer versions. A lot going on here, though, so it is just going to take a minute. And there you go. That is the finished result. Now, I will say this. You see these needle penetrations are pretty distinct in this particular preview, but in reality, when you actually go to stitch this out, they're less distinct than what visually you see here. But there you go. And you can see all of our jump stitches down here have been rendered. But our thread shim, the big thread jump, has not been rendered. But it all looks pretty good. So yeah, so I'm real happy with all of that. It looks good. And so I hope you learned something about this whole process. Don't be discouraged. It just takes a little bit of effort, but at the end result, looks pretty good. Thanks for watching.